All right, good morning, C Team. This is Mr. T, and it's Monday, April 6th, and it is a beautiful, beautiful day out there. I have some grass seed outside getting watered right now. It's one of my favorite things to do is to watch water and seed. It's so lame, I know. Sixth graders don't care. Anyway, Mr. Mulvey put a good post on there today about getting outside, something about his favorite poet. So if you didn't check your updates and see Mr. Mulvey's post on Schoology, do so today. It's a good poem. Kind of reflects a little bit about today and what you should be doing and taking away from days like today, considering the fact that we've been cooped up indoors with such terrible weather and such terrible news everywhere. Um, so today what we're going to do is I'm not going to keep you very long. I just want to kind of recap 2 days of last week. I want to talk about the first day when we talked about the fur trade and the Hudson Bay Company history. And I also want to look at Friday's primary resource article from a gentleman named Edmund Atkins. So at the end of this screencast-o-matic, all I would like you to do is, if you haven't submitted anything, you do need to submit. I notice that there are still a lot of people that have not submitted. There are still people that haven't checked in. Remember, you have to check in on the discussion board attendance daily. If you notice that other people haven't checked in and you know who they are, you're friends with them, or you Snapchat or some crazy kooky way to communicate what kids do today, then please reach out to them and just say, hey, you have to double check with check in on your attendance. So please do so. So just sit back, relax, and listen to the soothing sounds of my voice as we go through this. I don't know why you can't necessarily see the full page, but hopefully you are able to recognize here. So on Monday, I asked you to look at the video about the Hudson Bay Trading Company and the fur trade video. And then I asked you to submit a notability worksheet with doing two things. Well, actually three things. I asked you to research the flag of the two European countries that were involved in the 1700s and then do your best to draw it. Some of you, it was kind of clear that you didn't even watch the video because I had flags of India. I had flags of North America, which is not a country. Um, and so you didn't listen to the video. The correct answer in there was the flag that you see in the bottom left-hand corner here. That's the flag of the Kingdom of France, essentially with the fleur de lis, which is that little yellow symbol there. And on the right-hand side, you see the flag of Great Britain. Not so much England, but Great Britain as a whole, considering all of the British Isles. Now, the painting in the middle is showing a trader, obviously there with a native, and they are shaking hands and recognizing that, hey, hello, this is a greeting. We're making a fair trade. I also asked you to go ahead and put a drawing in there that represents something from the video. Some of you did a really great job and uploaded a painting, which was fine. Some of you did a great job putting together an image, a drawing. And so if you uploaded that and if you had the correct flags and you did an image in there, then you got a 5 out of 5. If you didn't, you got a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5. So if you still have not submitted that, you need to go back and do so. So let's talk about the video and let's talk about the Hudson Bay Company as a whole. So some of the things that were traded, right? We're looking at fur. We're looking at animal furs, right? And we're looking at some of the things that really just weren't abundant in Europe anymore, or abundant in Europe, or even prevalent in Europe, which means around in Europe, considering the fact that some animals, don't grow or excuse me, not grow. Thinking about my grass growing. Some animals aren't alive, or they're not. Mrs. Kane could give me a better word if I could remember. Maybe it's because there's pieces of my brain missing. Certain animals just did not live in Europe versus North America. So some of these furs were very unique to people that were in Europe, because if we think about economics and demand and supply, it's something that is unique and has value to it. Obviously, it has a high demand. And when you have a high demand for a product, you could place whatever particular price you want on it as long as the supply was consistent and if you can meet the market clearing price, which is why we come back to trade. So the Hudson Bay Company was basically England's attempt to get into the trading that France and Samuel de Champlain and and a lot of different traders that came into France and established New France, or excuse me, into Canada and established New France. What they did was they were essentially trying to compete. And anytime that you have two economic factions competing with each other, then what happens is, greed essentially gets in the way. And eventually greed led to conflict. But when you think about the trading relationships, and last week I asked you to look at, well, actually it was a week before, I asked you to look at a discussion board regarding, the two different types of, or what trade was to you, and what did you consider a fair trade. So if you look at the right-hand side of this page, these were some particular goods that the Europeans brought with them to North America to trade with the natives, which were considered to be the First Nations or the Inuit people of, at the time, Canada. Remember, Canada is not a country at this point. It's just an area that is being inhabited by Europeans. Some people are claiming it to be their particular territory and calling it regions of European factions like New France. And the Hudson Bay Company was calling Rupert's Land, essentially, was all the area around the Hudson Bay. So some of these things are just like copper pots. We can see steel. Steel is a huge achievement, essentially, that the Europeans had that the natives did not. The natives were still using stone, and they were still using weapons to try to trap and kill animals that were very archaic. But when you have tools, if you look at the top right hand, my little arrow over here, it's a trap. And then over here we can see that we have some steel axe heads. Steel is extremely strong. It doesn't break. These are huge, valuable items, tomahawks that were trade items, and the demand was huge for any of the native population. So trading essentially was good for them because they could go out and trap as many of these animals they wanted. And if you could bring along a pot that would help them boil water and help them hold water or to cook food, and it was reusable, and all you needed to do was just clean it out, then it was something that was a major, major technological achievement for the natives. Now, obviously, this right here, some of you would call it a gun, but technically what it's called is a flintlock, and we'll talk more about flintlocks here in the future. But why it's called a flintlock is because this portion of the weapon itself is known as the lock. It is different from what we saw in Samuel de Champlain's account of when he was with the Huron and encountered the Iroquois, or when Hernan Cortez was in Mexico. They used something called a matchlock. This is a flintlock because there's a piece of stone in there that when striking what's known as the frizzen, it fired spark down into the pan, and in the pan it ignited powder, and it fired through either a rifle or a musket, which is known as a smooth barrel. And this one's a particular rifle. Rifles they just have rifled inside the grooving of the barrel, which makes that ball fly further and straighter. Great achievement. So all of these things here on the right had high demand. All of these things were in abundance. So Europeans were people that natives almost sought out in the beginning. Then eventually things changed. Now, if we look here at this map, we can see this is the key, right? So the green is French territory. This is showing us from 1634 to 1763, towards the end of what we're going to talk about with the French and Indian War. But this is essentially territory that is New France, the green. It's anywhere along the Great Lakes. It extends down into the rivers that really bleed down towards the Mississippi. Up top, we have the Hudson Bay Company region where we're looking at extending throughout the Hudson Bay area. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see that this whole area here, which is basically the northeastern region of the United States today, it was just known as New England. We obviously know about New England. So we're looking at two regions that are essentially owned by England, or excuse me, Great Britain, and then we're looking at the area in the middle that is considered to be French territory. Now, so what happened was, and just to sum up beaver trade really, is that if you look at the top left-hand corner, you can see that there's a beaver, and that beaver is making his way through a dam, and that beaver is getting caught using methods that the natives had to trap beavers. It was really simple stuff. Now, they checked them all the time, and they made sure that they got enough profit, and they brought their beavers back to their villages, and in their villages, people worked to clean and tan those particular hides so that they were ready to be brought to the trading post, or excuse me, just to even meet up with their European allies. And what they did is exchanged goods. And you can see in this little image here of this little cartoon, this guy is exchanging off, it looks like a flintlock, for some pelts here in this image. Then up we go down the river, and that trader, he's full of his canoe with his hides. He's traded his goods, and he's now bringing his goods to what are known as these trading posts. And these trading posts were dotting all along the Hudson Bay Company, or excuse me, the Hudson Bay itself. Hopefully you saw that in the video. And then from the Hudson Bay outposts, they were then transferred by large sailing ships to Europe. And in Europe, they were brought there and they were manufactured into basically what you have is this beaver hat. It's funny to think about that all of this chaos and confusion and basically all of the conflict is over a fashionable item. I think sixth graders act in that way too. At least when Yeezys were very popular. I don't know what you guys are into anymore. Maybe it's because we haven't reached the fourth marking period together. Um, but all of this conflict is established over essentially this fashion item, something that was in high demand and was very profitable. It was extremely cheap for Europeans to get these pelts. And since beaver, the population in Europe was very low, the population in Canada at the time was extremely abundant. So to get these pelts at an extremely low price meant that there was a high demand in Europe by the manufacturers because it was cheap. But when you got it in Europe, they sold these hats at these higher premiums, considering the fact that this is a North American hat, North American beaver. So these people that were making and manufacturing these hats were making hand over fist money. So they were essentially just keeping this process going. And Britain obviously received a lot of benefits, and so did France. That's the Hudson Bay Company history and video. Now, the conflict starts when the two of these people start to engage in communicating with each other or arguing with particular tribes. Essentially, the English with the Iroquois and the Six Nations people, and then we have the French that are talking about the Huron, or more aligned with the Huron. So what we see is that you have two groups of people that have really never liked each other. We can go all the way back to something known as the 100 Years' War, where the French and the English have constantly been butting heads. Now, more and more outposts, if we talk about outposts or trading posts, are being established. But as trading posts are being established, we also have forts that are being established. Let me see if I have I didn't put the map in here. Let's go back to this map. So forts. In this image here, you can see throughout the French area in the green, you have a lot of these little squares, right? Fort de la Presqu'île, Fort Niagara, Fort Oswego, Fort Le Sieur, Fort Le Saint-Antoine, Fort Tremblayeux, Fort Saint-Nicolas. I'm trying to do my best French impression, or I guess accent. We also have some English forts in here too, but some of them are predating, or excuse me, are post-dating, I guess, where we're really talking about. Some of them are more talking about time periods during the French and Indian War. We're not there yet. But what you can notice is that all along the river, you see these little squares. Fort St. Louis, Saint Louis, right? Fort Crèvecoeur. These are all French forts. So in this article that you guys read the other day, talk about this guy, Edmund Atkins. The English government is wondering what it is about what's going on there that they're doing so much better than us. Why can't we figure this out? So if you haven't had a chance to look at this article, you need to do so. Currently, I only have a minute left here. So this article is basically saying that, and if we just kind of read over the right-hand side here, and in your opinion, how did the French influence the Indians? So the French did this based upon, they made friendly relationships. They did this through missionaries. They did this through exchanging gifts and giving them things. They built stronger friendships. The question, the second one says, how important were military forts versus forts in the heart? The French established friendships. They built these friendships through hearts. That's why this thing was called building forts in the hearts. The English did something different. They built military forts to try to control people. It didn't help them. Why are British traders less successful at winning Indians' respect and support? And that's it. Because British traders were crude. They weren't very good people. And you can read all of that in this particular article. Sorry, I'm running out of time. Hopefully you learned something here. If you have questions, I'm going to put a discussion board on there. I want you to go into it. Look at the questions. If you know the answer to a question, you can help someone out. Please respond to the discussion board. Get outside today. Have a great day. I have one